looks like fair weather cumulus has returned to our area once again here in Texas. Had a bit of an air mass change from Wednesday when it was raining cats and dogs. Let's take a look at that surface map. It's looking a little bit more like August. We've got Tropical Storm Henri right off the coast of North Carolina there. The track of that has shifted a little bit further to the west. A couple days ago, NHC was thinking that that storm would remain out in the Atlantic and just graze Nova Scotia. However, the current track is bringing that up into the Rhode Island and Massachusetts region. In the Great Lakes area, we've got this weak high-pressure area, which is bringing northerly flow to parts of Virginia and eastern Kentucky and giving us this stationary front across the Carolinas. In the Central Plains, we find this strong cold front moving through Sioux Falls, approaching Omaha, and this is that old polar front that we had further out west a couple days ago. That's crossed the northern Rockies, and you can see those temperatures quite cool in Wyoming. We're only seeing 50s and 60s at this hour, and Montana 60s covering that area. That's quite a contrast from a little over a month ago when we had 90s and 100s almost every day. So I'm sure they're enjoying that change in the weather. Typical storms down along the Gulf Coast. We have an MCS covering part of Mississippi and Alabama, and some storms in the Big Bend area with this high dew point, 65 degrees there at Lajitas. So with that moisture and orographic lift, that's helping to produce some showers and storms. And you can see the effect of that front there across the northern plains, looking at the red dashed lines. Very strong thermal gradient all the way from Manitoba down through the Dakotas into Colorado. And that carries back to that system that's out in Oregon. And taking a look a little bit further south, there's Hurricane Grace approaching the coast of eastern Mexico. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. And let's head up north. The cool weather continues for the Alaskan interior. Temperatures down in the 40s at this hour. That's going to be around lunchtime there in Alaska, and that's due to the infusion of some cold air into that region. Cold air has also invaded the high Arctic. You can see 34 degrees there at the northern tip of Victoria Island with some snow coming down from around Somerset Island back to Banks Island. Before we go into the air masses and dynamics and all that, let's check out the NHC play-by-play. Winds 60 knots in Henri, and that is a tropical storm. And the current track taking that actually into Long Island, around the Hamptons and into Connecticut, that will be making landfall during the day on Sunday as a Category 1 hurricane. Let me verify that. Yeah, let's see here, 75 knots. Yeah, that's going to be Category 1. And, of course, we have the storm surge warnings out for much of the coast from right around Stamford out towards Cape Cod, and a storm surge watch in western Long Island. Rainfall potential looking like this, looking at about 4 to 6 inches for the most part, with a spot of 6 to 10 inches around Hartford and Windsor Locks. And there's the swath of forecast tracks. So let's sort through these, shall we? We start out with the official NHC track. That was earlier today. They definitely have shifted that further to the west, somewhere in there. Let's look at that real quick. Yeah, there it is, going right into central Connecticut and up into the southeast corner of Vermont. There's the NOAA consensus variable track, which looks at some of the best models. It does tend to be very accurate, and that closely follows the NHC track, maybe going a little bit further west. And part of the reason are the European models, such as the UK Met. That's gone for a track all the way to New York and into the Hudson Valley. And the European model did something kind of similar, taking the track west into western Connecticut and into Albany. The GFS track, not doing that, that's lying pretty closely to the NHC official guidance. In fact, it's pretty closely right up on it. Yeah, look at that in Vermont. The Canadian track going pretty far to the west, doing this loop over New York and yeeting itself out of there. The HWRF track going pretty close to the GFS and official guidance. And the COAMPS model, I guess not really doing so well. That's taken more of an easterly track. And then we've got Hurricane Grace out there in the Bay of Campeche, 80 knots, which is a Category 1 hurricane, and let's see, 979 millibars. Let's check out that track. I'm not aware of any viewers in Mexico, so we're not going to spend too much time on this, but there it is. Landfall as a hurricane and moving inland and dissipating. It's very close to landfall, within 12 hours there. Looks like it's increasing to a low-end Category 2 hurricane, and then dissipating. Let's put in that coordinate 20.4, 96.6. Yeah, that's going to be our landfall location, so moving inland. And yeah, the wind swath is mostly going to affect these little towns. Tecalutla, Poza Rica, but not the big cities. That looks like that's too far north or too far south to affect Tampico. And too far north to affect Veracruz. So just kind of going in between in that rural area. Well, we definitely got to look at it on infrared. There it is crossing the Yucatan yesterday, then moving out into the Bay of Campeche last night. This is the overnight hours. That's about midnight. And you can see the anvils really flaring up there, a large central core, very cold, the gray shades showing up, and towards the very end there, looks like some rapid intensification. So based on that, I would not be surprised to see it come up to Category 2 pretty quick. Let me bring that up towards the end. Yeah, see that right there? Really pulling together. The one thing that we're lacking is a clearly defined eye. I don't really see one in there. But yeah, that's that central dense overcast, very substantial and rapidly growing. For tonight, is that cold front going to bring any record low temperatures? No. We are going to come close to the record for the date at Rapid City and Sheridan, Wyoming, dropping into the 40s, but that's not going to break any records. But we may see some records broken overnight in terms of very warm, low temperatures. In other words, the overnight lows are going to be rather toasty. And we see lots of 70s there in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. These aren't breaking any records for the date, but they're coming within about 4 degrees. And that's due to that flow of very rich tropical air coming northward. Further up in the northeast U.S., that tropical air flowing up into that region also. And that could spell some temperatures close to the record for the date. Bangor, Maine may tie the record of 67, and not sure what station that is in Wisconsin, tying the record of 70. And then for afternoon temperatures tomorrow, cool in the Los Angeles, San Diego area, 79 there. That's going to come close to records for cool afternoon maximums. And as for hot weather tomorrow, very little to be found. Florida warming up into the mid-90s. That's not going to break any records. Same thing at Buffalo, coming up to 86. Very muggy and warm, but not record-breaking either. And I looked at the data for the next 5 days, and the only significant day I can find is Tuesday, where it's going to be very warm around Louisiana, East Texas, and Arkansas. Vicksburg is likely to break the record for the date set in 2014. They're going to be up near 100 degrees, and looks like a lot of warm weather throughout the South. Where's that warm weather coming from? Well, if we look at the 500 millibar heights and vorticity, we do have a progressive pattern across the west and central U.S., so none of that hot weather in Portland or anything like that. However, ridging through Texas up to Missouri and into the Great Lakes, so that's one reason the temperatures are a bit warm in that part of the country. The 591 decameter contour sitting over South Texas, high over that region, and that's the reason that the precip is shut down. Then going into the next few days, you can see that high just kind of pulls out the lounger, plugs up its phone charger, and settles in for a week of torment across the south. So yeah, 591 decameter enlarging and covering much of Texas, Louisiana, and that's one of the reasons we're going to see temperatures starting to come up early next week. And let's see, any relief from that? Well, not really. By late in the week, it looks like the ridge has established itself over Oklahoma, extending into Arizona and up into the boot heel of Missouri. But that does open up some easterly flow in the Gulf Coast region, so we could see some chances of rain starting to come up along the Gulf Coast area. Maybe Houston, Lake Charles could start getting some shower activity. Do things break up after that? Not really. Look at that. That upper level high just sits there for 200, 250 hours. So we're in it for quite a while. And the other factor this time of year is precipitable water. Definitely a lot of it. And I think back on Wednesday, we were talking about a surge coming up next week. We're going to have to check that out. Grace, you can see it off the bottom of the map there, heading into Mexico. And there goes Henri, taking aim on New York and Connecticut. And let's see what happens over the next week. Just south flow, pumping moisture into the Gulf. I do see the precipitable waters coming up to a consistent 1.5 to 2.5 inches. So we are certainly priming the air mass right there. Also a tongue of that heading up into Illinois. So that will bring us increased probabilities of storms in the Midwest. Going into Wednesday and Thursday, yeah, there's that moisture surge. Some of it looks like it's recycled, but it just kind of really fills in there by the 30th and 31st. That's getting pretty far out there, but basically I don't really see any end to this tropical fetch. Maybe some sign of change up north. Looks like a anticyclone coming out of Canada, but just not enough oomph to bring that south into the southern U.S. And I just want to check out the 5-day tropical weather outlook. Yeah, something forecast out here, but otherwise it does look pretty quiet in the Caribbean and the southwestern Atlantic. And the GFS, keeping things quiet. I don't see any. Yeah, there's one little storm actually right there around September 3rd. That's way, way, way out there, but that's affecting western Cuba. So we'll kind of keep that on our radar here for the end of the period, maybe the first week of September. It's bringing a little tropical storm up there into Florida, but that far out, we could see any range of possibilities. We just don't really know at this time. This is interesting here. It looks like winter setting in Alaska. Let me back that up. Yeah, it looks like a series of frontal systems moving out of Siberia into northern Alaska. There's one around the 27th. Again, this is getting into long range. And an even stronger one. Do you see it there coming out of Siberia? Right there? That's a very strong one. And look at that heading into Alaska. Snow on the Brooks Range. 520, 522 decameter contours coming into northern Alaska. That's a very powerful frontal system. And that brings snow all the way into the interior, maybe Fairbanks, and maybe all the way down to Anchorage, picking up a little bit of that white stuff. And moving into Yukon, and looks like another surge coming in from the west. So that's interesting. If that pans out, we'll take a look at that in a couple weeks. And just a quick tour around the country on the satellite. You can see the profound lack of vertical development along that sea breeze. In fact, I'm not totally sure where it is. I guess that might be it right there. And then some other so-called air mass storms going up east of Shreveport. But the Big Bend, yeah, that's really firing around Toya, Marfa, and down towards the Mexican border. In Arizona, the ridging has also suppressed thunderstorm activity. Even the Mogollon Rim, not much to be found there. Looks like more fire problems for California. Got one out there near Bakersfield, and of course the other fires up in Northern California are still going. And there they are, smoke just about everywhere you look, up and down the San Joaquin Valley. As we go north into Oregon, we get into that maritime polar air mass, cool conditions spreading inland, and the air mass modification resulting in cumuliform clouds and showers in parts of the Columbia River Basin. Some of that cold air also affecting Montana and Wyoming. You saw those 40s on the weather map, and with the very, very strong air mass modification, you're getting very steep lapse rates right near the surface, and that's given us these cumuliform clouds with showers and lots of afternoon clouds in that region, and that should die down later tonight. Further to the east, pretty well-defined dry slot there in South Dakota, and the cold front out ahead of that dry slot, running about like that. Got some impressive storms in Minnesota, down to northwest Iowa, and some even bigger ones in the Lincoln, Nebraska area. That's a very spectacular cloud. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. Yeah, there's southeast Nebraska there. You can see the clouds forming up during the afternoon, and we get cumulonimbus clouds. And we can see the impressive structure, the flanking line on the south side. You got the anvil right here, shearing off to the northeast, and we have overshooting tops. This marks the updraft, and then the main downdraft region is in this area right here. And the new cumulus clouds going up right there, that's merging into the CB itself, and you get that southward propagation down the line. So it's basically back building to the south, and the combination of the northeastward movement and the back building kind of gives us a sort of eastward movement, and that's what we're seeing with these storms here. Out in the Carolinas, some CBs going up with the presence of that boundary through North Carolina, and there's trouble lurking offshore. That's going to be up in the northeast U.S., of course, by Saturday night and Sunday. And there's how that area looks. A little bit of northerly flow in place across New York and Pennsylvania. Some southerly flow offshore, so I'm kind of suspecting there could be a little frontal wave through that region off Long Island, probably bound up with that other boundary in North Carolina. We had some big storms in Newfoundland. Yeah, we're the only weathercast on YouTube that looks at Newfoundland. You can see those storms going up right there along that other frontal wave up in that region. That's the overshooting tops, but it's overcast to that region. But some pretty strong storms going up, affecting mostly Gander. St. John's located right here. Gander is somewhere up in this region. And I'm sure there was probably some hail somewhere in that stuff. And going back out into the plains, there's our look at that system. Got the surface low located right there, the cold front extending south, warm front up to the north, and this low pressure area stacks back towards the west where we find an upper level low out in this area, either a trough or an upper level low. And with that upper level low, we have very cold conditions in the mid levels of the troposphere. That gives us very steep lapse rates in the bottom half of the troposphere and very showery conditions. And that's the reason we have all of this showery weather and cumuliform cloud across the high plains. And that'll be a good stopping point for tonight. I hope you enjoyed Forecast Lab. I want to thank our new Patreon supporter, Thomas Wozencraft, and of course our Patreon supporter from Wednesday, David Abrahamson. And of course I thank all of our other existing supporters, such as Philip Haley, Andrew Heron, John Buma, Thomas Jagger, Styx Mix, and Christine Cortez. Even though I may have not read your name, I appreciate all of your help with Forecast Lab, and hopefully we can keep improving this program. And if things pick up, we'll add additional days and put the program out a little bit more often. We'll just have to see how things play out. Anyway, we'll be back on Monday for the supporters and on Wednesday for everybody else. Hope you have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.